Welcome to AuthorTube News, a podcast by two authors looking to stay informed on events which affect their careers and spread the word on upcoming books. I am your co-host, Carrow Brown.
And Tamara Woods.
On episode 1, we will be discussing book advertisements gone wrong, bad book reviews and you, social media influence and engagement, how to not lose your book advance, and author advice to new authors. Whew, man, I've been waiting to do this for a while.
I'm so pumped!
Yes! Yeah! Yeah, we definitely have a good list of books to go over at the end of all of our news, so make sure you guys stay tuned for that. We got some goodies for you today. But let's go ahead, and I'm going to throw the big news topic that I know Tamara has been holding on to, which has to do with the Amazon changes to pre-orders.
So, if you are an indie author or a hybrid author and you publish to Amazon, then you know that Amazon likes to change things up often, all the time. But this change is actually going to help us out. So, if you are publishing on Amazon, KDP no longer requires you to upload a draft. Of course, this only applies to ebooks. So if you are publishing a manuscript, you still have to upload your full manuscript. And if I'm not mistaken, you can't do a pre-order on a manuscript.
No, you can't. That was the big misunderstanding I had on my end, because I thought once I had the manuscript formatted and turned in, they could do physical pre-orders. But they were like, no, JK. So, yeah.
So just so you're aware. And but nowadays, you could delay your release date one time for up to 30 days without penalty, as long as you change it at least one day prior to the original pre-order date. Mm-hmm. Whereas before, if you needed to delay, you would lose that opportunity to do another pre-order for a year.
Yeah, that's brutal. Yeah, I'm really happy about this change. This is going to be great for self-published authors.
It's amazing because, you know, we have the opportunity to have so much control over how our platform works and what we do. And when this kind of control is in our grasp, it allows us to have more flexibility. So nowadays you can create a pre-order for up to 1 year window, which is incredible.
Yeah, because before it was only like 3 months, where publishers could have like a book out for almost like 2 years on pre-order. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. And it was definitely talked about behind the scenes a lot with angry authors. Yeah, that was, I really do like seeing this change with Amazon, because, you know, as somebody who does do traditional publishing, this just means that the barrier or the I don't want to say the advantages or disadvantages, it just means that they're becoming closer together, which I think is wonderful. I definitely want to see self-published authors like succeeding more. I do too, and I think that we are part of a different wave in this publishing industry, and one way is that we can utilize our power is to be able to do these pre-orders and to have them available. As we all know, the best way to sell this book is the next book.
Yeah, seriously. Oh, I can't wait to see what other changes Amazon does. I hope they happen a little bit more that puts everybody online with the traditional published authors. I know I've definitely had some beefs with the way that Amazon treats self-published authors versus traditional. Like in a video I mentioned about how traditional publishers can, you know, basically have scenes with like, you know, sexual assault or rape in their books, but self-published authors can't, and they get taken down for violation of TOS. And I'm like, well, hold on now. Like, why are you treating one different than the other? Like, come on.
Oh yeah, and poor erotica authors, they are totally up against it all the time. There's always some type of issue. Their books are not pushed as much as other genres. It's just a mess. It's difficult, but if it's something that you really want and you're willing to put your all into it, I still believe that you can succeed, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, no, I mean, speaking frankly, it's puppy dogs and sex sale. So yeah, if you write it well, they will come.
Oh,
all right. So enough about me talking about Amazon. I'll let you continue with your other points.
All right. So, all right. If y'all are aware of book Twitter, you know that there is always something going down.
Always.
Always. And this time, it's something that was a little bit more lighthearted, but I thought that it was an interesting jumping off point for a conversation. So, have y'all seen all those hideous, terrible memes where people were using different food items as bookmarks? I mean, we're talking Oreos, we're talking vitamin water, we're talking Steakums. Steakums. How could you betray me so? Gushers. Are you kidding me?
I saw the one with a taco and I was so conflicted.
I think that my response was, this is a travesty on all levels.
I know, like you ruined a book and a good taco. Like, why would you do that? That's so rude.
How dare? So I became aware of this when I was looking at Angie Thomas's Twitter, and she is the author of The Hate You Give. And she had responded with a tweet, hey, add Oreo, add Check Mix, add vitamin water. Instead of practically destroying books for social media likes, maybe donate some books to some classrooms in need instead. And of course, that wasn't responded to at all. But I did think that it was an interesting topic to think about. There's that whole idea that any type of news is good news, you know, or I don't care what they say about me as long as they spell my name right. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, we've all heard it before.
Yeah.
It's kind of like how certain YouTubers become infamous. And
I was about to say, I don't want to say their names, but yeah, I know exactly who you're talking about there.
Mm-hmm. We all know a few. But is that a reality in the book world? Because if you look at like these tweets and the resulting responses, they were incredibly negative. So I wanted to do a little research. I want to look into things a bit. And there was this article published where they looked at 250 hardcover fiction novels that were reviewed in the New York Times between 2001 and 2003. And the ones that had good reviews, their sales were increased by 30 to 52%. But the interesting thing was the negative reviews. With established authors, it was a decline of 15%. But for unknown authors, there was an increase by 45%.
What?
Yeah. So on one level, if you are already established and you receive a bunch of negative press, then it'll hit you in your pocket. But with people who are unknown, there's a potential just to get your name out because name recognition is so huge in getting people to buy a book. Mm-hmm. In one of the articles I read, they talked about how often you'll hear someone talk poorly about a book, but you won't actually remember later on everything that was said about it. And there might just be enough in your memory just to remember the name of the book or think, oh yeah, I remember hearing about XYZ book. Maybe I'll check that out. So, but I don't know if the whole kind of negative publicity thing is really the avenue that you want to take when it comes to promoting your books.
Well, yeah, especially with the way that things are right now, because people are just so quick to write off, other people, or find reasons to write them off, like, just handing them an excuse on a platter. I wouldn't recommend that actually for self-published authors at all, because they don't have the backing of a publisher to kind of support them during that time. And with the way that cancel culture is right now, that's terrifying. I mean, there's a huge debate going on about cancel culture and if it's toxic and why it needs to go away, and it just, from somebody on the outside who doesn't participate in this at all, like there's just some people who kind of, I hate saying this, who get off on destroying somebody else's life. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. So to piggyback on that, Emily Wenzel, the author of Blood Air, remember when there was there was a whole debacle on Twitter where people were reading her arcs and they were accusing her of racism. Am I correct?
Yeah, so yeah, I know exactly what story you're talking about. Because what happened with her is that her book went out for ARC reviews, and somebody who was doing the ARC review took a snippet of the book and put it on Twitter, which, by the way, you're not supposed to do that. Just saying. But they took the comment and they put it out of context and made it seem like, that she was racist and that she was promoting slavery, even though that element in the book was actually not a major part of it. And Twitter mob like ganged up on this poor author and bullied her, and she ended up taking her book down, and with the idea of not putting it back up. But she did some soul searching and decided that the people who had persecuted her were wrong. And one of the negative side effects that happened with this is that you had people who hadn't even read the book going to like places like Goodreads and just already like giving it bad star reviews just because of something that somebody else said without verifying it for themselves. And super kudos to her for looking at her book and saying, no, I'm going to put it back up. Like, that takes some serious strength and determination there to basically stand up to the mob and say, no, you're wrong.
I agree. And I think that, but I do think that is an interesting point that sometimes people do need to be checked with what they write. Like, for instance, there's this article, when social media goes after your book, what's the right response? And one of the authors who is interviewed, Kara Drake, she wrote The Continent. And that was a huge Twitter dumpster fire. But what she did was she recognized that she had handled things poorly, even though she didn't realize it at the time. And she went back and she consulted with 4 different sensitivity readers and worked on portraying like Native people in a way that wasn't a bit racist. And she learned from it. And it's interesting because not everyone who is accused of behaving badly actually have. But I think that it's important for people to do that kind of reflection to see what is happening. Did I trigger this negative response because I actually handled something incredibly poorly? And how can I fix it?
Yeah, no, and that's a great point. And, one thing I do want to say, full transparency, I'm not always a big fan of Twitter mob just because of the mob mentality. But, I mean, that just applies to mob mentality in general. But one thing that I will give Twitter mob is that the idea that they are trying to go for is correct. They're looking to have more diverse authors. They're looking for more representation in books, and they're doing all of that. I think that that's a noble cause. Now, the way that they decide to go about getting their opinion heard, that's usually where I have an issue with. So for example, with the issue with the author who's writing Blood Air, they were really upset because slavery was in the book and slavery is bad. We can't let this get published. Rah, 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 rah. Right? That was kind of the knee-jerk reaction that they were having. And what I found ironic in that entire situation is that the author of this book is actually an Asian immigrant who wrote the story, and basically they attacked the person that they wanted to have be part of the author community and bullied her into taking the book down. And again, it's kind of like a weird mixed priority. And one of the things I do kind of want to talk about when it comes to social media and the backlash that happens with books and books reviews is that this is still like an ongoing conversation, because obviously this situation with the Blood Air has come up multiple times since the whole thing went down, because you had the initial response, and then you had the backlash to the response, and then you had the backlash to the backlash, and people are trying to still figure out, the proper way to do this engagement. And without there being guidelines or a general rule of thumb for people to follow, it's kind of a make it up as they go. And people, at the end of the day, I want to say have good intentions, but they get so wrapped up in proceeding with those intentions that they end up bulldozing people.
And what's wild is the book still hasn't been published yet.
Yeah.
It's not it's due to be released November 19th. So okay, I'm going to just get on my soapbox really quickly. I really hate when people make reviews of books that they haven't read, and they're just doing reviews based on what their favorite says. I think that is incredibly disingenuous. You can dislike what you think is going to happen all you want, but I just feel like that is, I don't know, I just don't think that that's good practice. And granted, I know that reviews are for readers. I absolutely 100% agree with that. But as a reader and an author, I don't agree with that practice. And this book already has over 300 reviews and over 300 ratings, which makes me wonder how many of these people have actually read it.
Oh, no, I guarantee you nowhere near that amount. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I don't blame you on the soapbox. I mean, just being real with you guys, I got a review for my book that came out that was a 1-star by somebody who didn't actually bother to read it. Like, they read like the first chapter and got upset by it and immediately gave me a 1-star for the entire book instead of, yeah. And I'm like, even when I don't finish a book, I still kind of, I don't know, this is kind of like a tricky area. Like, I wanted to make a video on my channel about reviews and like have this discussion. So probably this isn't the place to do it, but yeah, I definitely have thoughts about reviews, and I'm not coming at this from somebody who's salty. I'm just kind of coming at it from a, like, how should we actually do book reviews, right? Again, and this is also another area that doesn't really have any guidelines, and of course it's always you're an author, so you don't get to say how we do book reviews, but I read too, okay? I read too. You picked good topics. You picked great topics, I'm just saying.
Well, I love some good gossip, and I love doing research. So this podcast really, it hits all my good spots, all of them. Speaking of, if y'all know of some good things that we need to talk about, hit us up.
Yeah.
AuthorTubeNews@gmail.com. Send us some emails. Let us know of the good word or the bad word.
Let us know if we have to do an urgent news. I'm looking forward to the first urgent news, oddly enough.
Well, we have like that special report.
Yeah. Hot topic, guys. We gotta talk about this. But yeah,
hot off the presses.
Yeah, I'll leave a link down for you guys below so you can just copy and paste it if you want. Oh man. All right, so I do not have as many topics as you, but I think we'll have fun with these topics, especially this first one. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, so the first topic that I chose to discuss in our very first podcast has to do with a blog that is called How to Lose $333,000 Without Really Trying. And God. And so this was spurred on by a tweet that Lily Mead did, and she started this tweet thread where she was talking about, if I had any kind of advance, it would help me out in my family situation. And of course, like, I was like, what are we talking about here? Like, what is going on? And come to find out, there was an author who wrote this blog, and they were accounting their situation about how they basically went from having a really nice advance of a very large sum. I'm not going to say it because I don't want to. And I'm not going to say this author's name either. And the reason I don't want to say this author's name is because her entire blog post was just a pitch for her to offer coaching services to other writers. And, being totally frank with you guys, I am so tired of meeting other authors trying to offer coaching services to other authors. You can do this thing. It's called Make Friends. I'm serious. I am so serious because I was reading this and I was like, did you not make other writing friends that told you about how to manage your money? Because just behind the scene, Tamara and I talk about freaking money all the time and how expensive it is to be a freaking author. And she was using her advance to buy like non-refundable tickets to go to places to do research. She went and lived in an expensive part of town. She was just kind of yeah, and then it goes downhill because, you know, her next book comes out and she doesn't get as much as of an advance, and then she does another, and basically she lost the steam and she had to learn the hard way what it's like to be Tamara and me.
Broke,
yeah.
Broke. You know what? Oh my goodness. I had so many feelings. One thing that I found really interesting about her take was she talked about how she is from a background of basically she wasn't privileged in the sense of like money. She didn't come from a moneyed background. So she said that when all of this money poured into her hands, that she kind of, she lost her cool a little bit and decided to kind of go for the dream place to live instead of being more practical.
Right.
But when I talked to my people who are also not privileged in the monetary sense, we were all like, but wouldn't you want to take some of that money and like, because you know that money doesn't stay around for long.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you want to make do something with it that would have a longer impact on your life? Now, I don't know if at that time she was young. I don't remember if it says how old she was.
No,
when
she didn't mention her age. Yeah. No age mentioned.
Yeah. So I don't, you know what I mean? So like me and these years, as opposed to me in my early 20s, for instance, I could see myself blowing a chunk of money in my early 20s. But even then, I think that I would have done, like she said that she hadn't paid off her student loans.
That's insane. As somebody with student loans, I would have been the first thing I paid off. Like, no more student loans. We're done with that BS.
Yeah. Like, so I feel like there was, granted, she didn't have a financial background and she didn't really know what to do, but there was also a lack of maturity, period. And I didn't understand some of the things. Like she said that her editor was
fought for her to get a higher advance. I was like, that's your agent's job.
Right. I was like, wait a second. And I'm coming from an indie perspective, so I was like, Carrow, is this
no
what is
no, that's not how that works. Yeah. And then
you were like, absolutely not.
That's not like, how that works. Like, the only way that works is if the editor is sleeping with the publisher. That's the only way.
Oh, not to start rumors, but that would be a great rumor.
I know, right? Yeah. And then just for folks who don't understand how advance work, basically the advance that you get is money that the publisher gives you, and you don't get any more money from royalties until that sum that you've made has been paid back. And then typically what happens is if you're not able to make that money back, if, like capitalized, underlined, bolded, if they sign you up for another book, you will not have as much of an advance because you still need to pay back that money.
That was an interesting thing. I wondered, did she not read her contract? Because she didn't seem to understand how her advance works at all. And she was very surprised that the second advance wasn't as big as the first. And the third wasn't as big as the first. It
depends on sales, and it depends on how your genre is doing. So, for example, like a couple years ago, like dystopia was doing really well. So people were like, give me dystopia. And so they were giving big payouts for that. But if you tried to do dystopia now, you won't get the same payout because it's not a quote hot item. Right now, the hot item is witches. So people are looking around for witches and trying to publish that stuff out. But I promise you, this time next year, people are going to be like, I'm tired of these witch books. Find something else.
It's interesting. And really, where were her friends? Did she not have any friends at all?
That was my thought too. I was like, where are your writing friends at?
So my dear listener, my dear viewer, grab your tribe. Find people who are doing what you're doing and love it. And, you know, find someone who's where you want to be in the future. Find someone who's where you are right now. You know, expand your circle to include writers who are doing this thing, because publishing is an incredibly weird,
difficult, painful process.
And it's not like anything else that's out there, you know. And it just behooves you to have people who have an idea of how this works so that you can support each other. And she did not have that kind of
support network at all. Yeah. That was that, and that blew my mind a little bit too, because the first thing that, you know, a lot of writers do is they try to find other writers who understand why they talk to voices inside their head, you know?
Right. Oh, cool. So I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then there is one final point that I did kind of want to touch on in regards to this article, because I mean, obviously whatever she was writing may not have been very good. And that the other thing that I was wondering about that's not mentioned in this article is kind of like her reputation with the publisher, because your reputation with the publisher will affect everything else. And so if they see that you're a high needs whatever person, you're going to find yourself finding subtle ways to be pushed out the door. But on top of that, because I do want to talk about advances and the nature of advances and how it's changing for traditionally published authors, is that they are proven to actually be getting smaller right now. Earlier this year, I went through the Census Bureau to go look at the salaries that authors were having, traditional and self-published authors, and self-published authors are being shown to have a higher payout right now. You know, it's kind of marginal next to traditional published authors at the moment, because obviously there's advances and royalties that come after that, but traditionally published authors are actually being shown to have a smaller payout because their advances are getting smaller, and this is partly due to Amazon. And not to be back on the Amazon train, but Amazon is always pushing to make things cheaper and more affordable for the quote common person. And so publishers are meeting this need, but it's coming at the cost of the advances. So, you know, some people who are banking on these advances aren't going to get them in the way that they need them to be.
And I think that's why there's a lot of traditionally published authors who are becoming more hybrid and starting to publish their own thing.
Yeah, Rachel Aaron's a great example of that, because she got published originally with Eli Mon Press, that series, and then she got with a self-published author, and he told her how much money he was making, and she at first was like, what? And then she looked into it, and she's like, holy cow, I could make a lot of money. And so she had this series about dragons in, I think it was Detroit, and nobody wanted to touch it. And so she was like, fine, I'll just self-publish it. And sure thing, man, that thing took off. People apparently wanted to read about dragons in Detroit.
It's true. It's a true story. So, you know, indie publishing, it's messy, but there's benefits.
Yeah. So I only have one more article. I only had two compared to yours. So this other one was kind of prompted by a tweet that Moniza Hossain, if I'm saying that name right, did, where she was basically saying advice to give to new writers. And dear listener, I would definitely appreciate whatever feedback that you have to give on this. Like, if you would give a piece of advice to a new author, what would it be? Like, just right now off the top of your head, just so that way we can kind of see what you have to say on the topic. And I'm definitely nosy and like to know people's opinions on this topic. But so she did this tweet, and in her tweet she said, don't waste money on SEO for website, don't get a website, and don't get fancy bookmark swag. And I remember staring at that and having a lot of mixed feelings. Did you see that tweet, Tamara?
I did see that. I can understand don't bother with expensive book swag, because when you start to look at swag, it costs a lot. It costs a lot of money to have beautiful pieces to give to people. And especially when you're in your beginning stages, you just don't have the kind of funding necessarily to support that.
Right.
So I can understand that.
The website I'm not on board with. I'm not on board with that one.
I have mixed feelings with that. I think that, okay, here's another soapbox. I think that in today's publishing industry climate, we look at social media as the end all be all. Mm-hmm. But we should all learn from MySpace.
Oh, right.
Like,
that's a good one.
You know what I'm saying? Like, what we're doing now doesn't necessarily mean that this is what we're going to be doing next year. Think of all of the changes that has happened just with Facebook. Mm-hmm. Now they're trying to get people to promote groups more than their pages, whereas pages used to be, that was the way that you would contact and get in touch with your readership. Mm-hmm. So social media is great on one hand, but you don't have control over social media.
Right. You
have control over your website and you have control over your newsletter.
Yeah. Huge yes on the newsletter. I know that from the traditional side of things is that there are definitely a lot of publishers who are looking to see what kind of footprint, like digital footprint, that authors are having, mostly because they're trying to check out a person. Like there was somebody that applied to where I am right now, and we went to go check out their social media, and their Instagram was bad. Like they would post these pictures and ask like these controversial questions and then troll people, and it was like, I was like, no, just a huge no from me. I don't need that to be representing us.
Yikes.
Yeah, so like I've always told people, like, if you're gonna have social media and you feel the need that you need to be a troll, make a different profile. Like do something else. Don't do that, because the first thing a lot of people are gonna do is they're gonna Google your name, they're gonna Google your handles, they're gonna see how you talk to people, and they're gonna see if you're a fit for the group or not. So whatever social media that you have is going to be looked at. And on top of that, if you don't have any social media, they're going to note that too. It's a kind of a little bit of a red flag. And as somebody who gets to sit and listen to other publishers talk, it's better if you make your Twitter and your Instagram and your website, because if you have the publisher make it, then they have control over it. And if something happens and you need to leave, all that stuff that's made, they're keeping it.
Great point.
Yeah.
Great point. And, being careful with your social media that extends not just to publishing, but jobs.
Yeah.
If you're like most of us and have to have a day job or something on the side to help supplement your writing career as you're going along, you don't want to have a lot of for lack of a better term, dumb shit on your social media.
It's true.
You don't want it.
Yeah.
They will pay attention.
Yeah, when I used to be a teacher, I used to warn my students all the time, because there was one kid that we had who had a scholarship, a sports scholarship to college, and the college went through his Twitter account and found some racist tweets when he was 14. They took the scholarship away.
Oh.
Yeah. So, if you gotta be an a-hole on the internet, I just say do it under something not associated with you, and don't link it to you. Don't tell people about it. I'm just saying.
Think about it. When someone new follows you on Twitter or Instagram or what have you, don't you look at their profile to see what they're saying?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I had somebody follow me, and they had like I don't want to say the name or what they had in their bio, but it was definitely one of those kind of like WTF expressions on my face. And I was like, nope. Nope.
Exactly. And then that's natural, and that's just on like a personal level, let alone when it becomes part of a business plan.
Yeah.
We can't forget that even though we all love writing and it's a beautiful thing and we're so happy to be telling these stories, this is a business.
Yep. So those were the 2 articles I had.
No, those were great.
Oh, okay.
I had a great time.
Yeah.
I hope that y'all did too.
Yeah. So this brings us to the part that everybody's waiting for now.
AuthorTube Shoutout!
We're so excited. All right.
I'll start with Amy Tasugata. Her book launched September 1st, but since we didn't do a podcast before then, we are going to announce it now. and it's called Year 3, Would It Be Okay to Love You? And it's a contemporary gay romance. And the tagline is, a voice actor out of the closet, a boyfriend in the tabloids. Can their love survive the trappings of fame?
Ooh, I want to read that. I'm going to write that down. All right, so the next one that we have is Nora Zikra. Their book is coming out on October 1st. It's urban fantasy called Divinity Falling. She didn't sign up to sell souls. He didn't sign up to be human. Ooh.
Me neither.
I
know. So, Caitlin Duncan, she has a pre-order that launches October 1st. It's a contemporary romance, and it's for the holiday season. It's called Wrapped Up for Christmas. It's the most wonderful time of the year, but not for A.G. Martinelli. Uh-oh.
I like that.
What's going on with Angie?
These guys have great elevator pitches. I need you guys to teach other people how to do elevator pitches. So next we have Kelly Martin. Their book is coming out on October 7th and is called Never Kiss the Dead. It is horror, and their tagline is, the past never stays buried. If there are zombies in this, I'm all over this book. I have to look it up.
And finally, we have Joey Paul, who is launching on October 2nd, Dying Thoughts. It's the 8th book of a series. It's a YA paranormal mystery, which, I mean, we don't see a lot of those. Tara's story ends with a loss she can't come back from.
Dun, dun, uh-oh. Dun, dun, dun.
This is great. I am so glad that we were able to do this. Y'all, we are going to have a link in the liner notes for you to let us know when you have a book launching, pre-order. Give us all the deets, and we will tell our people about it.
And if we didn't mention your book today, stress not. We're just trying to not bombard people with all the books that are coming out. And again, we'll have another podcast out in 2 weeks, and we'll definitely mention the books as they come in, chronological order. So
yeah. Well, I feel like this was a very informative and fun podcast. I feel like that this was a great way to start this whole shindig off.
Yeah, this is like what we talk about in Discord, only we're doing it here.
True facts. Yeah. Speaking of facts and news and ideas, if you have any, send them to us at authortubenews@gmail.com. And we will check out your news tips.
Yeah. So, and then if you know anybody that you think needs to be informed on any of the AuthorTube news, please feel free to share this link with them. In fact, share the link anyway. Like the video, por favor, just because we're trying to beat that algorithm so that way we can reach more people.
Heck yeah. Daggone algorithms. Algorithms. Oh, wow.
Algorithms.
That was real country, but West Virginia came out.
All right, but I think that's us for the day. My name is Carrow Brown. I definitely thank you for showing up for today's first podcast.
My name is Tamara Woods, and I'm so glad that you're here, and I hope you'll be here for next time.
Yep. But until then, stay awesome, guys. We'll see you soon.
Happy writing.